Have you ever stopped and wondered what is really going on inside your own head? I mean, what makes you, well, you? Today, we're diving into a really radical and frankly powerful way to understand our own minds. Think of it like a user's guide to you, all based on the groundbreaking work of the AI pioneer Marvin Minsky. Let's start with something familiar. Listen to this beautiful quote from the poet Pablo Neruda. He just captures it perfectly, doesn't he? We think of our emotions, especially something huge like love, as these profound, singular, almost magical experiences that you can't really explain. You know, it's the stuff of poems and songs.
Okay, but what if that beautiful, poetic view isn't the whole story? What if falling in love is less like some kind of magic and more like a computer program being launched? A program that just fundamentally changes how your entire system operates. Now that is the challenging idea we are going to unpack today. So let's get right into the big question that sits at the very heart of all this. We have this deep gut feeling that we're special, right? That there's something that separates us from just being, a machine. But is that intuition actually correct?
Well, on one side, you've got what's called the vitalist view. This is the idea that there's some non-physical spirit or life force that makes us human. But Minsky was a champion of the mechanistic view. And the key insight here is that even our living cells, when you look close enough, are made of tiny, intricate machines. So the argument isn't about the stuff we're made of, but about how that stuff is organized and what it does.
To really get a grip on this, we need a concrete example. And what's more powerful, more seemingly singular, than the idea of love? Minsky uses love as the perfect case study to show how our everyday language can actually get in the way of understanding how our minds really work.
He came up with this absolutely brilliant term for it, a suitcase-word. It's a word that looks like a single, tidy piece of luggage from the outside, but when you try to open it, a whole mess of different things just tumbles out. We use these words as shortcuts all the time, but they can stop us from asking the deeper questions.
So let's actually unpack the love suitcase. Just think about it for a second. We use that same four-letter word to describe a parent's bond with their child, a patriot's feeling for their country, and a scientist's passion for finding a new discovery. These are all profoundly different mental states, all just stuffed into that one simple word.
So here's the crucial point. When we say someone has fallen in love, it's not just one single feeling. It's a massive shift in their entire mental landscape. Minsky describes it almost like a switch being thrown in your brain. A whole new set of mental resources gets turned on. Things like idealization, while other resources, like our critical, fault-finding abilities, get turned way, way down. Or maybe even switched off completely. And this brings us to Minsky's central idea. And this is where things get really wild. We are about to challenge the most basic, fundamental assumption we all have about ourselves, that there's a single I sitting in the driver's seat of our mind. The normal common sense view is here on the left, right? There's a CEO, a central me, calling all the shots. But Minsky's model, the society of mind, is on the right. And in this view, there is no CEO. The mind is more like a messy, sprawling society of smaller, simpler parts, or agents, all competing and cooperating and forming little groups. What we experience as thinking is just the result of all that chaotic, collective activity.
And this diagram just illustrates the idea perfectly. Take a look. Anger, fear, and affection, they aren't single, isolated things. They are different patterns of activation across a shared cloud of mental resources. And you can see how they overlap. That's why we can feel mixed emotions, right? It's because different, sometimes even conflicting sets of these agents are all active at the exact same time.
So, if there's no central me, then what is that feeling of I that we all have so strongly? Well, the philosopher Daniel Dennett puts it perfectly here. The self is a story. It's a useful fiction, an autobiography that your mind is constantly writing and rewriting to make sense of its own actions, to create one coherent story out of all the chaos.
You see, even your own internal model of who you are is just that, a model. It's a simplified schematic, kind of like the one you see here. We create these simple little representations. Myself is made of a body and a mind, so we can answer basic questions about ourselves. It's a really useful user interface, but it is not a direct window into the incredibly complex machinery that's running underneath.
Okay, so you might be wondering, why does any of this matter? This is all a bit weird. Well, because thinking of your mind as a society isn't just some abstract thought experiment. It's an incredibly practical toolkit for understanding why you think and feel and do the things you do. Minsky had this fantastic car analogy.
He said, look, if your car won't start, it's totally useless to say it's just unmotivated or feeling lazy. That doesn't help you fix it. You need to know about its parts, the battery, the starter, the fuel pump. Vague psychology words are the same. To actually understand and maybe even debug your own thoughts, you have to think about the different parts and agents that are at play.
And to understand those parts, we need multiple ways of looking at them. This slide illustrates that idea so well with just a simple chair. On the left, you describe it by its structure: legs, a seat, a back. On the right, you describe it by its function. It's for supporting weight. To truly understand our minds, we need both. We need to know what the parts are, and we need to know what they do.
Minsky actually proposed that our thinking happens in layers, kind of like this Model 6 diagram shows. Down at the bottom, you've got the most basic, hardwired instinctive reactions. Then built on top of that, you have your learned reactions, then deliberative thinking, and it goes all the way up to self-conscious reflection at the very top. Each higher level can actually observe and influence the levels below it. That's what gives us more and more flexible control over our own little mental society.
So what's the big takeaway here? This point of view isn't dehumanizing. It's actually really empowering. All of a sudden, that feeling of internal conflict makes perfect sense. It's just different agents inside you with competing goals. Self-control isn't some mystical willpower. It's just one part of your mind learning to manage another part. And creativity isn't magic. It's about finding new ways to combine the mental resources you already have. It really is a toolkit for self-understanding.
Which brings us to our final thought to leave you with. If that stable, unified self that you feel like you are, if that's really just a constantly updated story, a work of fiction your mind creates to make sense of the world, then who or maybe what is the author?